Okay, so you know how you're always trying to like really grasp a new subject quickly and thoroughly right and have those like aha moments without feeling like totally overwhelmed?
Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive is perfect for that.
Okay.
We're going to tackle something super fascinating. The secrets to winning storytelling competitions.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. And you've shared some really insightful material with me that goes way beyond just like enjoying a good story, you know?
Yeah.
It gets into the nitty-gritty of what really makes a storyteller successful, like in that competitive environment.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are really interested in this right now because like storytelling competitions are getting so popular. It's not just this like niche thing anymore.
Totally. And that's what I found so interesting too, is like, why are they becoming so popular, right? I mean, obviously there's that creative outlet aspect, but the sources are really highlighting these like significant benefits that go beyond just that.
Yeah.
Like they talk about how you sharpen your communication skills every time you craft and deliver a story, and like how that builds confidence.
Yeah.
And then stepping into different narratives, you know, you're developing empathy.
Oh, totally.
So it's like, it's not just about standing up and telling a tale. It's like the act of participating itself gives you some serious advantages.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
The sources emphasize how these competitions, they push you out of your comfort zone, you know?
Yes.
You have to think fast on your feet. You have to connect with an audience right there in the moment and be persuasive.
Yeah.
And those are skills that are invaluable in any part of life.
Totally.
Whether it's personal relationships or your career.
It's like it makes you a more impactful communicator.
For sure.
Period.
Just like more effective.
Yeah, and I was so struck by this point about tapping into your creative potential.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you're faced with a specific theme or a prompt, you can't just rely on like the same old stories you've always told.
Exactly.
You have to like really stretch your imagination.
Yeah, it forces you to think differently. Yeah.
Come up with new ideas and craft narratives that really resonate with people. And, you know, if we think about the bigger picture here, I think it helps you develop critical thinking skills. You become more observant of the world around you.
I love that.
And you start to understand different perspectives.
It's powerful.
Which is huge, right?
Yes.
Because that can impact so many different areas of your life.
Totally. And beyond those individual gains, the sources also touch on the community aspect. You know, it's not just you by yourself doing this. It's like you're part of a group.
It's so interesting because sharing your stories creates these genuine bonds with other people.
Yeah.
You're connecting with people who share that same passion for storytelling. And you build empathy through these shared narratives.
I love that.
And it creates this sense of community.
Totally.
And these interactions, I mean, you never know. They could lead to friendships. They could lead to collaborations, even professional growth.
Absolutely.
Down the line. It's really cool to see how that all unfolds.
I know it makes sense when you think about it. When you're sharing something so personal, it's bound to create like a deeper connection.
Yeah.
And then you have that feeling of accomplishment too, right?
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
I feel
thanks boost you get from like putting yourself out there.
Yeah, and I think the sources make a good point that taking the stage or sharing your stories, it involves a certain amount of vulnerability.
Yeah, for sure.
But when you do that, and especially when you receive positive feedback, or if you even win it, it can be so validating.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And it encourages you to keep pushing yourself, to keep challenging yourself,
Yeah.
and exploring your creativity.
Totally. Okay, so winning obviously is appealing, but the path to actually succeeding in these competitions, it's not always a walk in the park right there. Like, the material you read, it really highlights some of the common challenges that storytellers face. And I know, like, just the thought of public speaking, you know, can be nerve-wracking for so many people.
Absolutely. And that fear of standing in front of an audience, the worry about being judged or criticized or even rejected, it's a really real obstacle for a lot of people who want to tell stories.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the performance itself, it's also about crafting a story that really resonates with the audience.
Right, because you could have this amazing story in your mind, but like translating that into something that's going to really connect with the people listening.
Totally.
That's a skill.
It's a whole other skill set. It's about finding the right tone, the right pace, the right language.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with sensitive topics or really emotional stuff. There's that fear of being too open or too vulnerable.
Yeah, and then when you're up there performing, you don't really know how the story is being received right.
Right.
You don't know if it's landing or not.
Yeah, that can be tough. That struggle to connect with the audience in real time.
Yeah.
It's about being attuned to their reactions and being able to adapt as you go.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So it takes a certain level of awareness and flexibility, I think.
Totally. And then there's like the whole structure of the story itself.
Right.
You know,
I think
it's not just about like recounting events in any order.
No, it's not just like a chronological list of things that happened.
Yeah.
It's about knowing how to build tension, gradually create suspense, weave in those unexpected twists and turns that keep people engaged. And I think editing is so important too.
Yeah.
It's a really crucial skill, knowing what to leave out
Yeah.
to make the story stronger, more concise.
Yeah. Which I imagine can be really difficult because you get attached to certain parts of your story.
Exactly.
And then that self-doubt can creep in, right?
Yeah, that lack of confidence, feeling like your stories aren't good enough or that you're not the right person to tell them.
Yeah.
A really common obstacle. And it prevents a lot of talented people from sharing their stories.
Totally. And let's be honest, like receiving feedback on something so personal, it's not easy.
No, it's not.
Especially when you've poured your heart and soul into it.
Yeah, learning to accept and utilize feedback without taking it personally or getting discouraged, that takes practice.
Yeah.
And it's about being able to see criticism as an opportunity to grow and get better.
Absolutely. And then this idea, right, of being authentic and vulnerable on stage.
Yeah,
It sounds so simple.
it does.
Just be yourself.
Right.
But when you're in front of an audience, it can be so challenging.
It is. Being genuine, sharing your true experiences without that fear of judgment, letting your imperfections show, that's where the really deep connections happen.
Yes.
It makes you relatable to the people who are listening.
Okay, so we've talked about why these competitions are so popular and some of the obstacles people face. Now let's get to the heart of it. Like, for our listeners out there who want to like elevate their storytelling in a competitive setting, what are the secrets? What do the winners know that maybe the rest of us don't?
Yeah, this is where the insights from all this material get really interesting and really actionable. And I think one of the foundational pieces is character development.
Okay, tell me more about that, because it's more than just like naming your characters, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
The best storytellers, they create these characters that feel like real people,
Yeah.
even with their flaws.
Right.
You have to understand their personalities, their motivations, what drives them.
Yeah.
You know their history, what they desire, what they're afraid of,
Oh, wow.
and that's what allows the audience to connect with them.
So it's like you really have to know your characters inside and out.
Totally.
Even like details you might not explicitly say in the story,
Exactly.
but it informs everything.
And all the nuances of their behavior. And then the next piece is emotional engagement.
Yeah.
A good story makes you feel something,
Yes.
whether it's joy, sorrow, excitement, nostalgia, any of those things.
Yeah.
And the material talks about how this is achieved through vivid descriptive language that appeals to the senses. You know, what did it look like? What did it sound like? What did it feel like? And you're building this empathy between the audience and your characters
I see.
or the events of your story. And then, of course, there's the structure of the story itself,
Yeah.
the way you organize it, how you present the narrative.
Yeah.
That's so important. Good storytellers, they understand how to build a narrative arc. You know, that journey that the story takes with its rising action, its climax, its resolution. They know how to create tension and suspense. They know how to weave in those unexpected twists that make the story really stick with you. And then pacing is so important. Think of it like music.
The rhythm and flow.
Exactly. Knowing when to slow down, when to let a moment breathe,
Yeah.
when to speed up to create excitement.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like you're conducting this emotional journey
Oh, I love that.
for the listener.
And when we touched on this earlier, but it sounds like authenticity and vulnerability are so key here.
The material really emphasizes that.
You know, being willing to share your real experiences, to be yourself on stage, to let your imperfections show.
Yeah.
That's what makes a story connect.
Right.
It makes it feel real,
Yeah.
and people remember it.
So true. And it sounds like this isn't something you can just like improvise.
No.
You need to practice, right?
Oh, totally. Storytelling is a craft that requires dedication and effort.
Yeah.
Consistent practice is key for improvement.
Yeah.
And the best storytellers, they're not afraid to experiment, you know,
Yeah.
to try different styles and techniques and figure out what works for them and what works for their audiences.
Yeah. What about like these storytelling champions and experts that you read about? What were some of the most valuable takeaways from them?
Yeah, I think one of the most common themes was this emphasis on connection and empathy with the audience. They emphasize that it's not just about the story you want to tell, it's about how that story is received and experienced by the people who are listening.
Or interesting. So really putting yourself in the audience's shoes.
Exactly. Understanding their perspectives, their interests, their emotions, and tailoring your narrative in a way that speaks to all of that.
Right.
There was one expert who said, the most powerful stories are not the ones that are told, but the ones that are felt.
Oh, wow.
And it highlights the importance of that emotional connection.
That's powerful. So it's less about conveying information and more about creating a feeling.
Exactly. And another really successful storyteller, they said to focus on the emotional journey of the characters even more than the intricacies of the plot.
Interesting.
That's what makes it relatable.
Yeah.
That's what keeps the audience invested. And then they also talk about the importance of having a clear story structure.
Yeah.
Beginning, middle, and end.
Right.
To maintain focus and make sure that the audience can follow along.
So to bring it all together for our listeners, it sounds like succeeding in these competitions, it's not just about having an interesting story.
It's this combination of really understanding your audience, crafting a story that has these compelling characters, genuine emotional depth, structuring it in a way that captivates, and then bringing your authentic self to the performance.
Right.
Through practice.
You nailed it.
And lots of practice.
It's about building those emotional bridges.
Yeah.
Through storytelling techniques and human connection.
Yeah, so I want you to consider your own communication, whether it's a formal presentation, a casual conversation, even just sharing a memory.
Okay.
Think about this. How might focusing on the feeling you want to leave with your audience rather than just the information you want to convey, how might that change your whole approach to communication and storytelling?
Yeah.
It's something to think about.
It is.
Long after this deep dive is over.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.